In my videos, I have talked about games or aspects of games that I dislike probably more than I talk about games I do like. It's a bit of a shame, really, because there are some fantastic games out there that I really want to talk about, but just haven't for no good reason other than I'm lazy, I guess. Well, today I'm in a good mood, and I don't want to bitch and complain. So let's talk about some games that I played and enjoyed so much that I recommend others give a try. First, to set some ground rules so this video isn't 7 hours long, today I am specifically looking at games that I played for the first time during 2022. Why 2022, you may ask, when it's currently 2024? Well, this video's been in the making for a while now, and it was supposed to come out last year, but things happened. Also, 2022 was a great year for gaming for me. It's also important to mention these games didn't come out in 2022 either. Well, one technically did, but more so it got a port to other platforms, so technically new to everyone who didn't own a PS4 like me. It's new to me, damn it! But these are games that I finally got around to playing last year. Anyways, without further ado, let's start off with the second oldest game on the list. A GameCube classic. The Legend of Zelda Four Swords Adventures is, well, not a traditional Zelda game by any means, but a fun cooperative adventure nonetheless. Or a competitive one if your friends are dicks. I played this with my buddy Nagels, and we had a blast playing through this. It's funny, we were hanging out at my apartment one day looking at magic cards, and he saw my GameCube hooked up, and he got all nostalgic. Asked if I had played Four Swords Adventures, and when I told him I hadn't, well, next time we hung out at my place, he brought the game, a few Game Boy Advances, and some link cables. And I'm glad he did, because this was a game that I was mildly interested in, but wasn't sure if I would pick it up, seeing as I don't have friends over super often. Or many friends, for that matter. Fuck, dude. How do you make friends anymore? I just turned 30 and questioned where all my friends went. I swear I used to have a lot of friends. Anyways, playing Four Swords Adventures is an absolute blast with a friend. So much that after that first play session, even though Nagels left his game and cables at my apartment, I went out and bought my own copy of the game. I still have his cables though, so hey Nick, if you're watching this, next time you're in town, I'll grab some cables of my own so you don't think I'm trying to steal these. Also, we need to finish our run in the game. We have like 3 more worlds to finish. But I digress. Four Swords Adventures has this fun mechanic where, while you play cooperatively with your friends, at the end of each level you get a score based on how many enemies you killed, how many times you died, and the big one, how many force gems you collected. Which turns this game from cooperative to competitive, because now we're just constantly trying to get as many gems to outdo each other. Now I'm gonna be real with you guys. I only bested Nagels in like 2 or 3 stages. He consistently kicks my ass in gems collected, but most times we have very close scores. Or other times he just completely slaughters me. Dude is relentlessly greedy, but hey, so am I, and that adds a whole other layer to the gameplay. Like, yes, we're working together to complete the level, but if a large force gem shows up, I'm beelining my way there and I don't give a fuck. I will open chests all willy-nilly. I don't care if that means I end up with all the extra heart containers and take the blue bracelet. I don't want to miss out on gems. I don't know what it is about co-op games that let you be a dick to your friends that just tickles me, but it's fun. Anyways, Four Swords Adventures is a blast, even with just one friend. And it has this cool feature of playing with a Game Boy Advance as a controller. When a player goes into a cave, the screen on the Game Boy Advance activates. so players can split up to a small degree, but will have to all come back to the surface to share the TV screen in order to progress to the next area. However, this is the only reason why I find it a little difficult to recommend people play in this modern day, unless they already have a GameCube, a few Game Boy Advances, and the cables, or at the very least are willing to go get them. Now, you can emulate it with Dolphin, which apparently has a built-in Game Boy Advance emulator. I haven't messed with this personally, so take that with a grain of salt. But one video I saw did show 4 players all playing the game together with the Game Boy Advance screens mashed onto one screen along with the TV screen. So your options are either buy the necessary hardware or figure out an emulator. But if you decide to buy, then there's another problem. GameCube games are ass expensive these days. Man, I picked the wrong time to get into GameCube collecting. The console, peripherals, and games are stupid expensive because everyone is trying to collect for the GameCube now, and sellers know this, so they drive up the prices too damn high. It's ridiculous. I should have started collecting 10 years ago, back when the games were dirt cheap. Sometime around the pandemic, people decided to collectively relive their childhoods all at the same time and start collecting GameCubes again. Also, Game Boy Advances can be expensive too, but I think that's because they're popular to mod these days. Hell, I even fixed and modded one myself, but I ordered this from Japan because they are dirt cheap over there. And despite the extra shipping cost, it was still cheaper to buy from Japan. Wait a second, I'm not supposed to be bitching right now. Right. Four Swords Adventures, If you have, or are willing to get a GameCube, or are willing to futz around with an emulator, I do really recommend Four Swords Adventures. It is a lot of fun with friends, and you can get a decent amount of playtime out of this. The only problem is if you're willing to get everything set up. Oh, and have friends. I can't help you there, man. I don't even know where all my friends went. What better game to play with your girlfriend than one about divorce? What, I'm not married to her yet. What's the worst that can happen? It Takes Two is another fun co-op game on my list. It's developed by the same people behind A Way Out and Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons. I loved Brothers, despite the controls being interesting. Like, it works for what it is, but it takes some getting used to. The younger brother absolutely has to stay on the right side of the screen and the older brother on the left side, or my brain will absolutely fucking break. Great game though, would also recommend. And A Way Out is another great game I recommend people check out with a friend. Fun fact, it was the first game I played co-op in with my girlfriend as just the two of us. Also a spoilery fun fact, she fucking shot me! Good way to start off a relationship, yeah? Well then, we eventually went on to play a game about a couple on the verge of divorce who get magically transformed into dolls because their daughter wished they would get along again, only to find they must work together to get back into their original bodies while a magical book about love tries to rekindle their relationship. You know, now that I say this out loud, it sounds weirder than it is. Or maybe it was always a tad weird, but it was fun. And that's all that matters, right? Games being fun, divorce being fun, being a dick to stuffed animals being fun. I actually hated this part. I didn't want to hurt the elephant, but the game made me do it. But something that keeps this game fresh is how the gameplay changes throughout. I love the fact that sections of the game had completely different gameplay styles and mechanics that were new to that part. The game does a great job of meshing these different styles too, and it helps keep the game from being monotonous. And of course, being a co-op game, there's plenty of puzzles that require both players to work together to solve. What's cool is May and Cody have very different skills throughout the game, and as the styles change, so do their skill sets, so puzzles often require both players to do something specific with their respective characters. There's a little bit of that in A Way Out, but more so with the way the characters hold themselves, like how Vincent is more calculated and forward-thinking, and Leo is more brash and acts first, thinks later. In one section, you have to sneak past some cops on a bridge. Vincent suggests sneaking under the bridge, but Leo is afraid of heights and suggests taking the cop car and sneaking past in plain sight. Either way, it ends up the same way, but it's cool how the game handles the two characters, even though once gameplay started, you could handle them however you like. In It Takes Two, however, the characters' skill sets and abilities are more reflective in the gameplay. In all, I really enjoyed It Takes Two, and A Way Out and Brothers, and seeing how these devs have grown with each game and storytelling with each game, I'm excited to see what they come up with next. I especially love how they handle co-op games. Like, some co-op games do it really well and others very lazily, and luckily they do it extremely well. I also love how if you want to play the game online with a friend, only one person needs to own the game. If the other player doesn't own the game, they just need to download a free friend version that allows them to join a player who owns the game. Sure, the free version can't be played with another free version, but it's nice that both players don't need to buy the game to enjoy it. And trust me, trying to convince your friends to buy a game can be a pain sometimes. It's like herding cats. Some people do it very well, and others, well, let's just say I can't seem to get some of my friends to play Halo Infinite with me. Like, come on, it's free! This was a game that I heard good things about, and even my girlfriend recommended I play it, seeing as how a lot of the gameplay involves stealth, and she knows how much I love Splinter Cell. So when she told me she thought I'd like it, I said, I'll check it out, then proceeded to not play it until like 2 weeks before it was leaving Game Pass. Yeah, so that's going to be a reoccurring theme going forward, me wanting to play games and not actually play them, and then when the game is about to leave Game Pass, that's the kick in the pants I need to actually play the fucking game. Why am I like this? Anyways, this is a story all about how Amicia's life got turned upside down, and I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. I'll tell you how she became the badass of the Inquisition. An Aqua teen born and raised on the Darun estate is where she spent most of her days, chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool, and flinging rocks at hogs outside in a field. When a couple of guys who were up to no good started making trouble in her neighborhood, her family got into one little fight and her mom got scared. She said, "You're moving with your brother to Luentis' farm." Okay, I won't spoil the game too much, but this is literally the first 2 chapters of the game, and they set up the story. It's like saying in Yu Yu Hakusho, Yusuke Urameshi dies. Like, that's not even a spoiler. The first episode literally opens up on his spirit staring at his own corpse. It's the premise of the show. But I digress. A Plague Tale: Innocence has an interesting story with a balance of stealth and action. Speaking of the stealth, something that stood out to me is how it differs from other stealth games like Splinter Cell or Metal Gear. You're not playing as a highly trained special forces operator. You're a teenage girl. That's not to say that teenagers can't be deadly, and there are plenty of instances in this game where you kill people, as well as one particular moment that comes to mind where you do a lot of killing, but she is not a trained soldier. She's a noble who got thrusted into this war all because the French Inquisition wants her sickly brother, whom she must now protect since her parents are currently out of the picture. Being that her only semblance of combat skills are with a slingshot, she's not going to be dishing out a lot of damage, and she can't take it either. Seriously, any soldier can kill her instantly. This game does not fuck around, dude. They will kill kids without hesitation. But that's what I find interesting. If you have to shoot your way out of a problem in Splinter Cell, you can, but it's not always the best idea. Actually, it's more like your last resort after all else fails. In A Plague Tale, though, you can only run and hide if things go tits up. I find this to be more tense though, because while you can meticulously pick off all the enemies in the area, more often than not, sneaking past is your best option. Which is typical for most stealth games, but at least those other games give you more options for combat. Amicia is incredibly squishy, and because she has to protect Hugo, you're constantly watching over a 5-year-old who can't defend himself, making that whole running and hiding after kicking a hornet's nest a bit harder. But I also want to point out how, unlike the trained Spec Ops soldiers of the other stealth games, Amicia is a stranger to killing. She isn't used to taking a human's life, and she struggles with the fact that in a lot of cases she must take a life to protect another. This aspect puts strain on both her own moral compass as well as her relationship with Hugo, who she barely knows because her mother always kept him away from others due to his strange illness. One that you're actively looking for a cure for while being chased by the Inquisition, who want him for some devious reasons. Also, there's rats. Did I mention rats? Holy shit, there are rats! Remember in Gears of War, when you get to Act 2 and the Krill show up and they shred any living thing with the audacity to step out into the darkness within a second? Yeah, imagine that but with rats, and it's like the whole game instead of one act. Which, to be honest, I actually like how they took the Krill from Gears and expanded upon it into a whole game. Now, I have no idea if Gears actually influenced the Plague Tale devs or if it was just a coincidence, but they managed to take the same concept and add more to it. The puzzles are more or less the same. Light up flammable objects to get past rats, take a torch to ward them away as you walk through a horde, move flaming objects, and even take out light sources to have the rats kill your enemies. But they do it in a way that made it feel like it wasn't getting old for me. I don't know what it was about the Krill and Gears, but I always sorta dreaded it, but maybe it was because it scared me the first time I played it as a teenager. But the Krill was a cool concept that I liked in theory, but wouldn't jump at the chance to play through those levels again. The rats in A Plague Tale, for being basically the same thing, didn't bother me as much. Which is good because that's like half the game. I don't know, maybe age has something to do with it. Maybe I'm less of a pussy now. Nah, you know what they say, you are what you eat, so that makes me a dick. Wait, what? Anyways, A Plague Tale Innocence is a great game with tense stealth moments, interesting puzzles, and a dark, ripping story. You know what's a good way to unwind after coming home from a long day of work at a dead-end job? Playing a video game about going to work at a dead-end job! Going Under is a delightful roguelike indie game that puts you in the shoes of an unpaid intern trying to work her way up the ranks of the company but quickly learns she's unqualified for the job. That's not her fault though. She was hired for marketing, and literally as she's being introduced to the company, her boss tells her to go kill monsters. And that's basically her job now. She literally doesn't do any marketing throughout the game, just goes down to the basement because the company was built on top of failed startups, you know, normal stuff, and kill a bunch of monsters that were employees of said failed startups. Your boss is a dick and holds your job over your head constantly, basically threatening to fire you if you don't go down into the dungeons and defeat the bosses in order to collect their relics and use them at Fizzle in the hopes that the company doesn't meet the same fate as those other companies. Gameplay is your typical roguelike fare. Work your way through a dungeon, collect power-ups, find weapons, and eventually get to the boss room. If you die, then you have to start over from the beginning. One fun thing is you can use just about anything as a weapon, which most of the time will be office equipment because sometimes you just gotta beat a motherfucker with a keyboard, am I right? The dungeons are unique too. There's Joblin, an employee outsourcing company with a focus on getting the job done as quickly as possible and moving on to the next. Winky Dink, a dating app where you can only communicate through emojis. And finally, Styxcoin, a literal crypto mine filled with the undead. That's another thing. The enemies of each job are different, which adds to both the aesthetic and variety of the gameplay. Joblin has, well, Joblins. Winky Dink has succubuses and incubuses, and Styx Coin has skeleton miners, not to be confused with miner skeletons. There are labor laws against that. This was another game that was on Game Pass that I finally got around to playing once I found out it was about to leave the service, but god damn am I glad I played it. I legitimately had a smile on my face throughout playing this game. The gameplay loop is fun, the humor is on point, and it only gave me minor to severe Vietnam-esque flashbacks to working at a startup company right after college. Oh, also, once you beat the game, there's a hard mode called Imposter Mode, where you try to complete each dungeon in one go, with the final boss against an imposter Jackie, and boy, that mode is fucking hard. I never beat it even after turning on all the easy mode options, and the more you beat imposter mode, even more difficult levels unlock, so there's lots of post-credits replayability here outside of just going back into the other 3 dungeons, which is still fun. It's a roguelike, dude. Even when you beat the game, you can still play more. So I've played the Resident Evil games in an odd order. I started with 5 on the 360, then played 0 on my sister's GameCube, but never beat it after I essentially rage quit it. To be fair, I died right after moving on to disc 2, and I hadn't saved in a long time, so when it prompted me to insert disc 1 and saw how far back I was, I just didn't want to deal with it all again. But then from there, I tried 2, 3, and 4 all on the GameCube, and just didn't get very far into them, which is a shame because I wanted to play more of them, but just wasn't in the right mood at the time, I guess. I also played Operation Raccoon City at some point, but we don't talk about that one. But the one game that eluded me was the big Jill sandwich itself, the original Resident Evil. Well, okay, not the original, but the remake of the original. See, I didn't have a PS1 growing up, or any PlayStation console for that matter, so I wasn't getting around to the blocky original with its beautifully cringy dialogue.
Oh, Barry!
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right.
But the remake was within my grasp since my sister had a GameCube that I technically wasn't supposed to play without asking for her permission, but most of the time she said no anyways, so I was more of a ask for forgiveness, not permission kind of kid when it came to my sister. We're cool now, but as kids, we'd be at each other's throats for no damn reason some days. Anyways, back on track. Since I didn't own the console, instead of buying games for it, I'd rent games through GameFly. But due to popularity and availability, Resident Evil Remake was always taken. Damn it, not again! Well, fast forward some 12 or so years later, and now I have my own GameCube and a copy of Resident Evil Remake. I played the Xbox One port instead. What? It was on a deep sale! I also bought Resident Evil 0 on a deep sale despite still holding a fucking grudge towards it. But hey, at least I won't have to insert disc 1 if I die. And to be fair, I already owned both ports on Xbox before picking up the GameCube, which I bought off eBay, and it came bundled with both games plus 7 other games. Although it was 4 NBA games and only disc 2 of Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes, so more like 4.5 games that I actually care about, and 4 sports games. I don't hate you that much. Okay, I'm rambling on far too long here, and I shouldn't have to justify why it took me till 2022 to finally play the first Resident Evil game. Actually, I played the whole game on stream, which you can watch the VODs here if you'd like. Or don't, I'm not your dad. Anyways, what can I say about Resident Evil that hasn't already been said a million times before? It's a great game. This one in particular being a great remake, and also, in this particular version, and in my biased opinion, a solid port. Does the GameCube version have achievements? I don't think so. I probably spent way too long running through the mansion and backtracking, but I felt like I checked every nook and cranny, solved majority of the puzzles, and fought just about all the zombies. Did I play on the easiest difficulty? Yes. Am I a bitch for doing so? Probably. In all seriousness, no one should feel ashamed to play games on the easiest difficulty. Just enjoy the game how you'd like. But that won't stop me from feeling bad about playing Risk of Rain 2 on Drizzle every now and then.
I'm sorry, Mom.
But I had fun with Resident Evil Remake. The scenery was spooky, the puzzles were a little tricky yet doable, combat was tense, my pants were mildly shitted. Holy shit, it's a fucking spider, oh my fucking Jesus Christ. And most importantly, the dialogue and voice acting was still campy.
A second late, you would have fit nicely into a sandwich.
Okay, so not as good as the original Jill sandwich line,
You were almost a Jill sandwich.
but there's still a good amount of camp in this remake.
Katamari Damacy.
Holy hell, what a wonderfully weird game. This is one of those games that I had heard about for years but never got around to playing. Again, didn't own a PlayStation 2 growing up. But when I heard they were making a remake to the original Katamari Damacy, I was hella excited. And then I didn't play it. But then I heard it was coming to Game Pass and I was even more excited. And then I didn't play it. But when my girlfriend played it and told me, Ryan, you would love this game, I got extremely excited. And then I didn't play it. But when I heard it was leaving Game Pass in 2 weeks, then I said, oh fuck, maybe I should play this. And play it I did. This one's gonna be pretty straightforward. The king of all cosmos accidentally destroyed all the stars in the sky after a drunken night of debauchery, so he tasks his son to do all the work of remaking all the stars, using a Katamari to collect random objects on Earth to then send into space, turn them into stars. Yeah, remember when I said this game was wonderfully weird? As one of my buddies once said, I question the Japanese. Anyways, Katamari Damacy Reroll is a simple yet fantastic game. It's just fun to roll around picking up things, getting big enough to pick up larger items that eluded you earlier in the stage, trying to get your Katamari as big as you can, only to still disappoint your father just like in real life. And the game scales in a fun little way in that some of the early levels you're in a house or in the yard picking up small items like paper clips and golf balls, and in some of the later levels you're picking up cars and even buildings. One of my favorite levels was the last level in the game, where you grow so large you end up taking entire cities and eventually entire islands. It's an epic level too, giving you 25 minutes to get to at least 300 meters in diameter. And if I remember correctly, I think I got big enough and picked up a god at some point. This is another game I streamed the whole playthrough of, so if you're interested, the VODs are linked here. But again, I'm not going to tell you what to do, I'm not your dad, I don't know how many times I need to tell you this. And now for the last game on my list.
You never see it coming. You see that my mind is the fast
Persona was a series that I knew next to nothing about until I started collecting some older consoles that I missed growing up, seeing as it was exclusively on PlayStation with only a few spin-offs reaching other platforms. Well, in 2022, the mainline Persona games finally reached Xbox, Switch, and PC with Persona 3 Portable, Persona 4 Golden, and Persona 5 Royal, with all three coming to Game Pass day one. Well, by this point, I was quite curious about the games, and my girlfriend was really interested in playing it, so we decided to check 5 out, and oh my god. To give you an idea of what kind of impression this game left on both of us, my buddy Warm, whom questions the Japanese, got us to make a top 25 list of our favorite games, and both of us made sure Persona 5 Royal was on our respective lists. I kid you not, dude, I caught the Persona fever with this game. Right after beating the game, my girlfriend and I immediately started Persona 4 Golden, and with Persona 3 Reload coming out in February, I'm pretty sure we're going to play this entire series ass backwards. And yes, we're even planning on playing Persona 1 and both 2s, even though Atlas pretends they don't exist. Probably gonna emulate those though. The only English version of 1 and 1 of the 2s were remakes on the PSP, and I don't feel like buying a PSP and hunting down copies for those games. Hey, so quick little edit while in the middle of editing right here. Turns out I was wrong. Persona 1 did have a North American release on the PS1. How do I know this? By spending too much fucking money. But I digress, this is Persona 5 time. For the uninitiated, Persona 5 Royal is the story of a teenage boy who was convicted of a crime he didn't commit and is put on probation, learns of another world where people with dark, twisted desires literally distort the reality of this cognitive world. And with the help of his new eclectic group of friends, they harness the power of their personas to defeat evildoers' cognitive selves, which in turn causes the real-world person to have a change of heart and confess their crimes due to the guilt they feel. This game's story is, well, very anime in logic. But what did you expect? Something grounded in reality? It's a JRPG, dude, try to keep up. This is also sort of a definitive edition of the original Persona 5 release, but dumbing it down to just definitive edition doesn't quite cut it. This is the same main story, more or less, but with the addition of a few new characters like Kazumi and Dr. Maruki, but also reworked palace layouts, a grapple hook item, a bunch of quality of life updates, like Morgana not telling you to go to sleep all the goddamn time.
Shut up, bitch!
Reworked confidants, new locations around the city, and most importantly, a third semester you can play after the events of the main game if you meet the right requirements. As in get certain confidants to max level before their respective deadlines and make the right choice at one point. Not gonna lie, we played with a guide up for a chunk of this because this is a beefy game and we didn't want to replay the whole thing because we made one wrong choice or didn't hang out with our friends enough. According to HowLongToBeat.com, this game is 142 hours long if you're doing a completionist run. We didn't do a full-blown completionist run and it took us 250 hours to beat it all. Now we did take our time going through things, but not 100 extra hours of taking our time. I swear, I think How Long to Beat is a liar sometimes. Any game I look up there, I know it's gonna take me much longer to beat. But it was an incredible ride. I legitimately love this game. It oozes with style. The soundtrack is amazing, the characters are engaging, the combat feels satisfying, everything just feels right about this game. Now I will say, while I would recommend people play this, I will also warn you, it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Not everyone likes turn-based combat. Very understandable. Not everyone is into JRPGs. Also fair. And it's a long game, so I can understand someone not wanting to invest the time into playing all of it, and I get that. Hell, I tried recommending this game to my dad based on the story and the, albeit light, stealth mechanics in the metaverse, but I fully knew he was not going to like the real-world time management or turn-based combat, so I suggested he just watch the anime instead. which is a good option if you don't want to invest the time into the game, but want to see the story, as it takes up about a tenth of the time. But my only complaint about the anime is that its pacing is a bit fast, and they don't spend a lot of time on certain characters that I would have liked them to flesh out more. To be fair, they're mashing a supposedly 150-ish hour game, actually less so since it's based on the original game and not Royal,
Wait a minute!
into less than 11 hours, but I mean, they could have made a few more episodes to cover some more of the content. I just want to see the main character romance goth mommy again, damn it. Yeah, you know what? I'ma say it. Goth mommy best girl. Pretty much all of the ladies in the game are good, but I will always be Takemi's little guinea pig. But besides the romancing, I legit cared for these characters. Except Takechi, I always thought he was a little bitch. And when my girlfriend and I beat the game, I felt a sort of emptiness. Like, what do we do now? We spent so long with these characters, and now that it's over, it almost feels bittersweet. We got the best ending, and it was a happy ending and all, but it almost felt like we were leaving our friends. Holy shit, I need more friends. Oh well, I guess we could play Persona 5 Strikers or Tactica next. Alright, enough rambling out of me. That's 7 games I played throughout 2022 that I highly recommend people check out if they haven't already. In 2023, I made it a small goal for myself to play a lot of games from my backlog, so I have a ton of games like these that I'd like to talk about in the future, so if you'd like to see that, maybe consider subscribing? Also, if you've played any of these games that I talked about today, or you plan to play them in the future, please let me know in the comments. I like hearing others talk about these games too. Or, you know, don't do any of that. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm still not your dad. Hey guys, I'm finally getting around to playing that new Spider-Man game, and it's been a little bit of a time coming, but I'm finally here. Let's get into this. I'm ready.
Use your spidey compass to
Oh yeah, this is next gen.
Thanks, Cat.